Hello YouTube, and welcome to World of Warships. Now, I haven't played this game all that much, but I have played enough that I think I'm prepared to throw down my first impressions. And it's a mixed bag. There are some things I like about this game, and in some ways I'd almost be prepared to say it's better than World of Tanks. But there are a couple of severe issues that really deter me from wanting to play this game. It's just one of those things. You kind of have to understand the expectations that I came into this game with. I love battleships. I'm all about battleships. I think the big guns, the heavy armor, that kind of stuff is just really cool to me. I'm more interested in battleship history than in other classes of ship. And so when I kind of saw this game, my first thought was, I want to play Battleship. There's battleships in this game, right? That's going to be sweet. But the thing is, right now, Battleship gameplay is fundamentally unsatisfying. And I think we'll see some of that in this game here. So I am playing in the USS Wyoming, the American Tier 4 battleship. And it's not a bad ship. It's got a lot of guns, but they don't have that great a range, and the turrets turn pretty slowly. Fairly typical of American battleships. It's slow, but the turning circle is pretty tight. It's got enough anti-aircraft to kinda protect yourself, but really you need your teammates to help with anti-aircraft. It's not bad. But like all battleships, the ability to do damage is heavily RNG dependent. And that's just so frustrating. It may well be a deal breaker for me in this game. And what I mean is that it mostly comes down to accuracy. Every time you fire your guns, it's a complete roll of the dice whether or not the shots will go anywhere near where you aim. They may go high, they may go low, they may go wide left or right. And because you have next to no control over where your shots actually go, it's extremely difficult to actually do damage consistently, because damage is then dependent on where you actually hit the enemy ship. You can ricochet off enemy ships, you can fail to penetrate enemy ships, you can over-penetrate enemy ships. And having so little control over that is intensely frustrating. And it even undermines the satisfaction when you do land hits. I'm going to aim at this Svetlana, which is a cruiser that I should be able to penetrate, but some of the time you would over-penetrate and not do very much damage. But right there, I got Citadel penetrations, which when you hit like the core components of a ship, which is called the Citadel, you do extra damage. That was basically all luck. I just kind of aimed generally in his direction and happened to hit his Citadel. I really didn't have any control over that. And while it's cool to get Citadels, and while my score at the end of this game is going to be better because I got that Citadel, it wasn't that satisfying because there wasn't really me accomplishing something. It was just RNG deciding that, sure, here, have a Citadel. And I believe that I'm actually going to Citadel this guy again. There it is. Which is cool. I mean, enemy ship destroyed. Hooray. Great job. But it's hard to feel like I accomplished something because I didn't really do anything and got lucky. And that's just how battleships are. Battleships are defined by their inaccuracy, by their RNG. And it's really frustrating. And it really kills the experience for me. It's not the only problem I have. There are other things about the game in general that are frustrating. There are other things about battleships in particular that are frustrating. But the RNG with battleship accuracy, I think, is the big thing. The big one issue that's my core problem with this game. And I don't think RNG elements are a good part of any game, really. Because they just take player skill out of the equation. Some games, though, the RNG system has its place, but a game like this, I don't really think the Battleship guns need to have anywhere near this level of randomness. You could nerf their damage, but make them more consistent, and it would just make the game fundamentally more fun to play if you're into battleships. So, as far as this game in particular, I've made this wide turn kind of away from the enemies. The other battleship that I've played a lot is the Japanese Tier 4, the Miyogi. And the Miyogi is a very fragile ship by battleship standards. And so, I maybe could have just stayed closer to these enemies and had more targets in range. But once you commit to something in a battleship, you're committed. And it takes a long time to complete any action. I did take a punt at that destroyer, but the guns are so inaccurate to begin with, and I led him too much. Which kind of amplifies the RNG issue when you realize that battleships have often 30-second odd reloads. That's a long time to wait between shots if you miss. And it just makes missing because of RNG even more frustrating. And it punishes you if you make a mistake. I'm not great at this game. I'm relatively new. I mean, Tier 4 is still pretty early. And so it's frustrating knowing that I might miss because I just didn't aim correctly and have to sit through a 30-second reload because of that. But I also might miss just because RNG decided to screw me, and that's really, really frustrating. Fortunately, I haven't really been the target. The advantage of my wide turn is that I was kind of out of the line of fire. So I'm still pretty much on full health, but our team is suffering. This is one of the kind of paradoxes with battleships in the current state of the game, is that in theory, battleships have the most armor and the most health, but in practice, if a lot of enemies can shoot you at the same time, you die very, very quickly in a battleship. And that's before torpedoes get involved. We can see my AA guns opening up on some torpedo bombers that are incoming on me. I saw this first one come down. I wasn't worried about it. I was kind of facing into it, but then, well, great. He cross-dropped me, and I can't do anything about this. My ship is far too slow to avoid that. And it actually is one of the other things that's kind of irritating, is that torpedoes don't have an RNG element. So these torpedoes are coming in. I think they were from the Izakaze, and I got very lucky that he was just out of range. But his range is a fixed value. It's not a... There's no RNG or anything. Like, they go exactly as far as they say they go, which I think is like 7 kilometers for an Izakaze. And he just didn't drop properly because he was too far away. And I benefited from that. But also, torpedoes, both airdropped, manually airdropped torpedoes and ship-launched torpedoes, they go exactly where they're aimed every single time. There's no RNG at all, which makes this destroyer, like this Nicholas that has appeared, that just makes it terrifying when you're a battleship, because you may not be able to hit them just because of the RNG of your guns, and that's assuming you can even get your slow-turning turrets to track them. But they can always hit you. You can turn and stuff. That's you. In theory, that's the balancing factor of torpedoes, is that they can be dodged. They have a long travel time, but oftentimes you won't ever see a destroyer. And the the game won't actually warn you that there's torpedoes until they're like 200 meters from you, which in a battleship is you're screwed at that point. You can't possibly dodge them at that point. So you're playing this guessing game of like, where is the invisible destroyer, and he can put his torps exactly where he wants them. Now I did have to hold my fire here for a second because I was worried about hitting the Wyoming next to me. And I've loaded HE because with your armor-piercing ammo, you tend to over-penetrate and do minimal damage, which is yet another layer of frustration. Fortunately, I happen to know that the American destroyers like the Nicholas don't have very good torpedo range. So, it looks like he's going for the carriers on my team, and I'm trying to eliminate him, but I don't really know where I'm supposed to aim because his ship is so small and so fast and can turn so quickly. So I'm just kind of hosing the area, and I get some hits, but not enough to kill him. And of course now I'm getting rather close to some of these other ships. I'm not as worried about the enemy Wyoming because as long as I bow onto him, I'm not that worried about him hitting me. I'm not that worried about him penetrating me with his armor piercing. I'm much more worried about the ships that have torpedoes. Which should tell you a little bit about the game balance right now. Certainly at low tiers. I should take a moment to note that as well. My experience with this game is all low tiers. Some of this changes at higher tiers. That's what I've heard. But I have no experience with that. And the low tier battleships, you're really at the mercy of enemies with torpedoes, and you're really at the mercy of RNG. And like the Wyoming has basically no useful secondaries whatsoever, so I don't have a lot of defenses against this Nicholas. I'm gonna have to try and kill him with my primaries. But you will have seen a moment ago I really screwed up my ammo, and I accidentally switched back and forth between armor piercing and high explosive. So I don't even have the right ammo loaded. That's on me. I mean, I'll own that. That was my mistake. But I'm turning in now to avoid his torpedoes. But of course, that means that none of my rear turrets can fire at him. Fortunately, the carrier on my team dive bombed him. So hooray! One of the cool things that battleships get is a repair ability, which I'm using now. And I'm going to aim in on this. I believe it's Kuma. And well, I'm gonna get him. A broadside Kuma at that range shouldn't be that much of a problem, but it wouldn't be unheard of for those shots to miss, even at this relatively close range. So now, of course, I'm in a gunnery duel with this enemy Wyoming, which is actually a much more comfortable situation to be in. I have a lot more control over when and how he can hurt me. He's kind of presenting the side of his ship, and I think he's actually stock as well, which, like World of Tanks, stock grinds are here in World of Warships, and it's just as stupid here as it is in World of Tanks, but whatever. So I'm trying to keep my bow kind of angled towards him and kind of waggle the rear of my ship in and out so that I can try and get my rear turrets firing without giving up too much of the side of my ship. Fortunately, he takes a big hit from one of my teammates there. So, ooh, this is dicey. I don't have a lot of health left, but neither does he, so looks like there's some incoming aircraft from my buddy. Sometimes I can't tell what ammunition is being fired at me. He might be firing HE, I'm not sure. But now he's turning in to avoid those torpedoes, so I don't have the broadside of his ship anymore. Come on, get him. Whew, got him. Okay, well, I have very little health left, but I'm still in this game. And the ship count is actually pretty even. Whew, okay. I was debating here which direction I ought to turn. The Wyoming's not bad firing into her rear quarters because of the rear-mounted, having the majority of your turrets aft. But I was a little concerned about these dive bombers coming for me, but they decided to drop on this friendly battleship in front of me, who I think is going to eat several. Yeah, ouch. So I'm going to fire at what appears to be a stock Miyogi. And, well, that was kind of ineffective. Fortunately, my repair party is back up, so I'm going to try and keep myself in the game with that. It looks like most of the enemies are concentrating on the battleship that's closest to them, so I'm going to go ahead and present more of my ship, because I don't think they're firing at me right now. One quirk with the Wyoming, and this is a couple of the American battleships have this feature, is the number 3 turret has a limited firing arc compared to the rest of the aft turrets. So like when I was fighting that enemy Wyoming, I didn't even try and use that turret because I would have had to give up the entire broadside of my ship, and that would have been extremely foolish. But now I feel like I'm handicapped a little bit by the somewhat limited range of the Wyoming, and I need to be heading back towards these enemies. But if I do that, I'm going to be in their range as well. So now I'm looking at this enemy Kaiser. If I'm lucky, he will shoot at the closer target, the Wyoming on my team. And ooh, RNG favored me there. I didn't get any Citadel penetrations, which is typically that's hard to Citadel other battleships. But I did get some solid hits. Right now he's giving me pretty much the whole side of his ship, but ow. I was really hoping that I would be more resistant to that kind of frontal hits, but RNG was not with me there, so he put some serious damage right through my bow. Now he's kind of turning away, which is not always great in a Wyoming. If you're not careful, enemies just run away from you because the Wyoming is not a very fast ship. I was a little worried here that I'd given up too much of the side of my ship, but RNG turned around and said, you know what, actually you'll get away with that one. It wasn't a great play for me, I wasn't positioned very well, but the enemy shots just missed, because lol. And at this point I was afraid to turn and try and get my rear guns firing, so I go through several salvos here, just firing my frontal turrets, which is it's not as much my firepower, but I think I would have died much more quickly if I had presented more of the side of my ship. Fortunately, I survived long enough to get my repair party back for my last usage of that, and I'm getting away with this right now. I have very little health, but I'm still in this. Unfortunately, we have lost a couple ships and it's down to just me and one other guy. Oh boy, and this Kaiser has a lot more health than both of us. Come on, let's see if we can get some good hits. So I take the risk and present my rear turrets here, because we got to do some damage, and I get some solid hits. Unfortunately, I get away with it. My timing was pretty good there. I was able to mostly angle back in before his shells were incoming. And I'm throwing my rudder. Of course, battleships have a very long rudder shift time. But I'm going to try this again and get my rear turrets going. See, can I get some good hits here? Swing back the other way. Oh, It was at this moment he knew he fucked up. I didn't time it very well, and I was still presenting far too much of the side of my ship there. And I paid the price. Not that hopeful that my one teammate can save us as my wreck slides below the waves. And as soon as I switched over to this view, I realized that this guy was stock as well, which that hurts our chances as well. And, well, yeah. You know, we were down for most of that game, and we kind of pulled it back a couple times, enough to make it kind of a close match, but we couldn't quite seal the deal. Fortunately, I had a pretty decent score. I was blessed with a couple of those RNG citadels. The Zuiho on the enemy team seriously dumpstered some of my teammates. He had a pretty monster game. But fortunately, I was top of the team. I did well enough for that. Looking at this here, I had a fairly respectable damage score. I received a tremendous amount of damage as well, partly because I survived long enough to use all 3 charges of my my repair parties. So I had a lot of health to burn, and I needed every scrap of it. But it was not quite enough. I did do quite a bit of damage to that Kaiser, especially considering that when I engaged him, he had a lot of health and I didn't. But wasn't quite enough. Of course, there were absolutely some things that I could have done better. There were definitely some mistakes I made. And there was also some RNG that favored me. There was some RNG that didn't favor me. And it's a part of World of Warships. And I find it to be an excruciatingly frustrating part of World of Warships. If you want to play Battleships, I'm not sure this game is going to work for you. If you like the other classes of ship, I think it's a little better. The RNG doesn't hit them as hard. But thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.